I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is home ownership consultant Ross Kay from thewealthyhomeowner.ca. Welcome back to the show, Ross.
Hey, thanks for having me back, Jim.
It makes me really nervous when I hear the Bank of Canada say we are going to monitor the strong Canadian dollar. First of all, I don't consider 82 cents to be strong. If it was at par, I would call it strong. Does it make you nervous when you have the Bank of Canada say it's doing anything?
Yeah, I think it does in terms of how I've watched. I've really only watched this process, honestly, Jim, since 2013. I'll be very honest with you. Prior to 2013, my interest was selling houses. That was my specialty. That's all I did. So although I knew interest rates by the minute that they were changing, I knew how that impacted the payments that were going to be ongoing. I never really watched how the policy interacted and the decisions that were made. And what I've learned is the extreme amount of ignorance that exists over these Bank of Canada decisions. But your listeners should understand that when you look at where these economists working at all of these places, where they get their education and training, when you look at what they're actually taught, first of all, they're all taught exactly the same thing. Now, when it comes to home ownership debt, which is, the big talking point in Canada, what I can tell you is that these economists are not taught how home ownership debt actually impacts the population. What you're talking about, I think, Jim, is we've heard rumors about the dollar, and they're worried about it getting too high, and that would cause them to raise interest rates, and they don't look at it as a whole package. It's sort of like looking at a housing market only from the seller's perspective, which is what organized real estate does, not looking at it from the buyer's side. The Bank of Canada, what they have to understand is that if they do anything to slow the housing market, that's going to have such a massive impact. Now, it's going to happen. There's no avoiding it here. But the slowdown in the housing market is going to cause GDP to decrease. The forecasts that they already have on the books will be wrong because the housing market is going to slow. The debt that's being accumulated through real estate is going to decrease. We track that. So our firm tracks that. One of the reasons that we can have the proper numbers, the forecasts for the members, is that we track all these things and we know how they interact to the home ownership market. And mortgage debt rollover is something that Canada was heading towards, even as the mortgages, they were claiming record gains in mortgage debt, record mortgage debt to GDP, record debt to income ratios. We've never ever looked at it that way. We simply look at it as how rapidly is the debt being paid down, the old debt, versus how quickly new debt is being added on. Because when you sell houses or you work with homeowners and you've worked with thousands and thousands of them, you know that's how that they interact with their home themselves. They are rapidly paying down mortgage debt. They decide they want to move, so they acquire more mortgage debt, and then they start they're rapidly paying it down as quickly as possible. The Bank of Canada does not have, in my opinion, in these last 4 years where I've been watching it, I don't see a cohesive policy where they understand if they make one change, how it's going to impact another part of the economy, which then will cause another change to take place, which will impact the forecast that they were hoping to attain. There doesn't seem to be any cohesive look at it. Now, maybe my perspective is different because that's my problem that I've watched with in housing forecasts and housing markets, and why we just sit back and most of the time, this is hilarious what this analyst or economist says about the housing market. Because we know that they always are forecasting these little changes, but they're not looking how that forecast, if it came true, would impact the entire market, which would in effect render the forecast impossible. And I think that's what we're looking at with the Bank of Canada here. We're hearing them talk about interest rates. Now, what I will tell your listeners is this. The reason we believe the Bank of Canada, through the OSFI, instituted the mortgage qualification rate. In other words, the fact that first-time homebuyers now have to qualify at rates 2% higher than what the current rate is. We believe the reason they did that was specifically what they're talking about now, Jim, at the Bank of Canada. Because this rate change, this rule, it effectively gives them more flexibility to raise interest rates without it impacting, for them to drop interest rates going forward without it negatively impacting the housing market. In other words, the housing market will not take off like a rapid fox, like it did the last interest rate drop. So I think what we're seeing here is they're raising the rates so that they can drop them again. That's what I believe, and I believe that understanding how the homeownership market works and how mortgage debt is being added to and then paid down at the same time, I see that component of the economy is going to be removed, and that would allow the Bank of Canada, or force the Bank of Canada, to not be as aggressive with the interest rates as what they say they're going to be.
We'll have more with Ross Kay right after the break.
I'm Bill McWilliam, president of Cascadero Copper, CCD on the TSX Venture Exchange. Cesium is one of the world's rarest metals with a growing industrial demand. Drilling is underway on our Tehran property in Argentina to prove up a cesium resource. Cascadero's patent-pending leach process has the potential to make Cascadero the lowest cost supplier of cesium in the world. Visit our website, cascadero.com, or phone us at 604-924-5504.
Glance Technologies owns and operates Glance Pay, a disruptive mobile payment technology now live in 16 cities in Canada and about to launch in the U.S. With revenues up 664% in the last quarter, Glance Technologies has the potential to be a worldwide leader in an industry projected to grow to $1.3 trillion in 3 years. Glance Technologies stock symbols are GLNFF in the U.S. and GET in Canada. Find out more at glancepay.com.
Welcome back. We're chatting with Ross Kay. Ross, the Canadian Real Estate Association is now forecasting Canadian home sales will fall this year to the lowest level in 3 years. That's a huge change over what they were forecasting just 3 months ago. Now, what's changed between now and then?
Oh, now I'm laughing at you. If your listeners go back to look at the old shows at the start of this year, you'll hear our forecast. You'll hear, and you'll see that the Canadian Real Estate Association now in mid-September is coming around to agreeing that our forecasts from January are more accurate than theirs are. What your listeners need to understand is that you cannot get your real estate intelligence from a real estate board or a realtor. I have repeated this over and over again. There is value in getting truthful metrics on a real estate market. It's best exposed, really, in what you're talking about right now. What real estate associations do is that in the fall, as the new year, as the year is ending, they look at the real estate market and they try to figure out how the government is going to interpret the real estate stats. So some years, at the end of the year, the real estate associations will make a forecast that implies the real estate market is slowing. They'll make those forecasts because the government is indicating they may take action because the real estate market is too, as economists like to say, frothy. On other years where the real estate market is slow, the real estate boards will make grandiose claims about how the market is going to rocket forward the following year, and that people should get out and buy because the market is going to be so hot, prices are going to gain. What people should do is go back and find these reports, because what the Canadian Real Estate Association does, as all real estate associations, which means it gets regurgitated from every real estate agent in Canada to the public. It gets repeated over and over again, appears in the news media over and over again. Every single quarter, they adjust that forecast. And this year is proof positive of, you don't even have to go back and look at the last few years and check them. All you have to do is check this year's out. At the start of this year, so last September, when we look at last September, at this time last September, the Canadian Real Estate Association was telling everyone there was going to be 536,000 sales in Canada 533,000 sales in Canada in 2017. They were saying there was going to be virtually a 0.6% drop. They also were forecasting that the average selling price was going to decrease in 2017. Now, the reason they made both of those forecasts were twofold. One, the government was looking at making changes to mortgage qualification, which they ended up doing anyways, and the Canadian Real Estate Association was afraid that was going to hurt sales. So what they did is they claimed the market was going to be just as busy in 2017 as it was in 2016. At the same time, the price was going to drop. They were making commentary that was beyond mathematical possibility. It just didn't make any sense. It was impossible. But you didn't hear an economist or the Bank of Canada or the Minister of Finance or any bank or any real estate association come out and say that these numbers don't add up. They are mathematical impossibility. If the market is going to stay on its current path in terms of number of sales, then the price forecast has to stay on the exact same path as well. The two do not work in opposite ways. If sales plummet, then your average selling price will decrease. If sales escalate, your average selling price will increase. If the sales stay just as rapid as they were last year, your pace of price was going to be exactly the same, which would have been about 10%. That didn't come to be true. And here we are, September, a year later, and for the third consecutive time this year, they have lowered the forecast for this year. Now they're lowering the forecast to 507,000. Now, which is higher than what it's actually going to be. So here we are with basically 2.5 selling months left in the calendar year for home sales. They're trying to present the market to everybody out there. Oh, it's busier. You should still get out and buy. At the same time, they are now forecasting the average selling price is going to be $508,000 for a gain of 4% this year. So now they're saying sales are dropping and prices are going up. I hope your listeners understand how absurd this is and why you cannot trust these people. It just doesn't make mathematical sense.
Ross, so to cut to the chase here, what is really happening and what should people really know?
What's really happening is each provincial market. So every single province is different, okay? they are all acting in a different manner, and that means that both sales and prices are going in different directions across all the provinces. Now, the only thing that the normal person has to worry about is British Columbia, Alberta, Ontario, and Quebec. Those are the four main provinces that regular people have to worry about, because that's when the Bank of Canada, the interest rates, the economy, GDP, those are the things that are going to dictate how that changes over time. Those four markets are all going in totally separate directions. So if you're listening to these reports where they're telling you the Canadian market's going this way, or the British Columbia market's going this way, or the Ontario market's going this way, they're not. Those markets are all functioning in different ways. Even within the province of British Columbia, you're hearing now that Vancouver sale prices are increasing, but the Victoria sale prices are decreasing. Just the opposite to what they were doing this spring. So how are any of your listeners supposed to take this information and make a rational decision on the single largest asset they will ever own? It doesn't make any sense that this is what's out there. So luckily, they have an alternative. If they decide to take it, they can take it. They can go check everything that they want. All of these stats can be checked.
We'll have more with Ross Kay right after this.
Lotus Ventures Inc. is a BC-based medical marijuana company poised to launch into the rapidly evolving cannabis sector. Lotus is in the final review stage of the Health Canada approvals to become a licensed producer, having arranged facility financing of up to $12 million, plus building permits for its prototype indoor production facility. Shares trade under the symbol J on the Canadian Securities Exchange. Visit our website at lotusventures.ca.
Keep informed. Receive our weekly recap of thought-provoking articles, podcasts, and radio delivered to your inbox for free. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage, HowStreet.com. Welcome back. We're still chatting with Ross Kay. Ross, Equifax was hacked and consumer data was apparently stolen. I was thinking about all the information stored in MLS databases, and do you have any concerns about data being hacked there as well?
Oh, 100% I do. I mean, I think in earlier shows, Jim, we've talked about how I have no problem with the sales numbers, meaning total sales, even community sales, or average selling prices, or benchmark prices, like however the selling numbers they want to release. I have no problem with any of those data points being released to the public. Individual sales, which is sort of like the hidden agenda here of all the people clamoring for big data when it comes to real estate. Those type of numbers should never be released publicly available to anybody with a computer. If you want to access that type of information, I have no problem with you accessing it, but you should have to access it with a being verified with who you are, and for people being able to track you for what you're going to use that information for. The reason I say that, Jim, is because I understand what can be interpreted about a family from MLS listing data. What I mean by that is I have enough experience myself that I can look over an MLS listing and I can tell you so much about the family who that home is owned by. It's scary. And what your listeners need to understand is this is the same thing with this Equifax breach. This Equifax breach, which supposedly only had a limited number of Canadians, what you'll notice in the reporting is, now, the reason I know this is because I was involved with organized real estate when MLS data started to be shipped down to the United States of America to run MLS systems. So this Equifax data, I can tell your listeners, Equifax is shipping Canadian data down into the States. They're relying on an outdated law, the privacy laws in Canada, that state that as long as the data in the United States is being held in a certain manner, that it's okay to let it go outside of Canada, which was, by the way, against the intent of the legislation when it was first being published. So that Equifax data, believe me, more than the few couple of 20, 30,000, whatever they say Canadians have to worry, that's not the truth. The truth is every Canadian needs to be worried because that information is out there. Your MLS data is exactly the same. As a member of organized real estate, I watched as breaches, hacks, happen to MLS systems in Canada with the public never being informed said breaches took place. Now, imagine if a real estate database like the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver was ever hacked. You're talking about literally hundreds of thousands of personal records of families that were hacked. The amount of information in those MLS listings is so vast. Now, remember, I'm talking about my perspective. I know what I can read from an MLS listing. Let me tell your listeners what I can read from an MLS listing, because the MLS data has photographs. I can pretty much go through any house that is on the MLS. I can tell you the education level of the people who live there. I can tell you the age of the children that live there, the sex of the children that live there. I can tell you what preferences they have in terms of electronics, furniture. I know what color codes that they like. Those items combined tell me probably what their income is from. I can usually tell you what education level they've reached, and often I can tell you what jobs they have. I certainly can tell you who's divorced and what women are living alone in those homes. I can certainly tell you which of the children's bedroom windows face which direction and which way is the best way to go to that bedroom window and look inside of it without anybody knowing.
Or break in.
Or break in. I can tell you which homes are vacant. I can tell you how much mortgage that family had when they purchased the house, how much mortgage they had when they sold the house. I can tell you this, literally hundreds of items I can decipher from an MLS listing. So when I hear about this Equifax, other than a social insurance number, which never appears in an MLS listing, your name, full legal names are in the MLS database. Your address and your previous addresses are in an MLS database if you've owned one or two resale homes and dealt with realtors. Your financial point of view is held in that real estate database because you can calculate how much net worth the family has built up while owning a home. You can do that by looking at the price gain and how much mortgage pay down they would have made over that period of time.
In other words, Ross, you're saying your house is your life and your life is tied into financials. And we know with databases, maybe Equifax didn't have direct information from you, but they're getting this data from everybody else. And we're just saying there's a concern. We want to make sure the real estate people keep our stuff as secure as possible, just like they would if they were showing someone your house. Ross, thanks a lot for chatting with us.
Thanks a lot, Jim.
My guest has been home ownership consultant Ross Kay from thewealthyhomeowner.ca. You're listening to HouseStreet.com radio. If you have any comments or questions for the show or our guests, they can be sent to info@HouseStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HouseStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HouseStreet.com radio is a production of House Street Media Incorporated.